did you go for access to the government and find that those doors were closed and say, well, I can do the story here with this family? Because of course, it's a very compelling story in its own right.
Well, we did go to the government and military and try and get access all up and down the chain of command, and you know, were turned down. But we were always very compelled by the family, and you know, didn't feel. My feeling is, you know, filmmakers are allowed to have an opinion. In fact, filmmakers can't necessarily not have an opinion. So I wasn't sort of bean counting, you know, one for the family, one against, one for the family, one against. I found their position very compelling. I did a ton of research. We worked on this for 3 years, so I've read all those documents, those same as Danny has, many times, and
all the redacted stuff.
Yeah. And the unredacted stuff, you know, that she unredacted. Right. So, you know, I found her very compelling, and I would have welcomed to hear the other side of the story.
You know, there's obviously some dispute that you look at in the movie about his actual demise, and I'm wondering, how confident are you that you fully know the facts?
The facts are not yet completely known, and the film reflects that. Okay. So what we do know is that it wasn't a fog of war. I mean, and I feel very confident that the notion that it was a confusing ambush in the way the government has said it was is a calculated lie. What actually happened that day is not yet known, because the soldiers have never been called into a real arena to account for their actions, because the government wasn't interested in actually finding out what happened. So, you know, I'll be totally candid. You know, we are on. There are people who go much further than us in terms of conspiracy theories, and we stayed well within the area that we felt was entirely defensible. The actual facts of Pat's case that are known are so outrageous and so different than, you know, what has been reported, that we didn't feel any need to kind of go into conjecture and stuff. For instance, in the way that sometimes the mainstream press has, ABC News reported, you know, misreported. Sorry, it may have been the AP. I got confused a little bit, but in 2007 there was a report that gets right at this instant that we're sitting here. It's probably being repeated again and again and again on the internet. That, you know, Pat's Pat's autopsy report, you know, showed that he had been shot at 5 meters close range. It was an assassination, and people have run with that, you know, and we found that to be erroneous. There's no need to go into these wild conspiracy theories, because what actually happened is a shameful cover-up and is outrageous. And actually, we feel that, like, the military would like nothing more than to have the other side of the equation be these wacky conspiracy theories, because then they can brand, you know, their critics as, you know, crazies. So I don't think we've engaged in that. It's hard to understand how those soldiers on the GMV that killed Pat could have fired on his position for as long as they did, and at as close a range as they did. It leads some people, not me, but it leads some people to think he must have been assassinated, because it's hard to imagine how an accident like that could have happened. I don't think he was assassinated. I think that the soldiers on that vehicle were out of control, criminally, negligently out of control. You know, not in that kind of way that it was like a forgivable accident in the chaos of war. It's well known that it's established right there in the documents that nobody ever saw more than 2 people attacking in this. If there was an ambush, and it's somewhat questionable, some of the soldiers, very few of the soldiers report seeing anybody attacking them. There is some doubt as to whether there was even an ambush. But if there was an ambush, it was not what the government has described as 20 people up on the ridgeline attacking them from all sides. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. It's a fabrication. And it may have been 2 or 3 soldiers who popped off a couple rounds, maybe an RPG, and ran like hell. 10 minutes later is when Pat was killed. So it was an inexcusable loss of control. And those soldiers who killed him reported seeing waving hands on the ridgeline, indicating that they were friendly. But they can't explain why they were unable to stop firing their weapons.
Right.
And by many accounts, they were firing for over a minute. In some accounts to 2 minutes, which is an incredibly long amount of time. Pat fired off a purple smoke grenade. He had time to yell his name over and over again. There was a lull in fire. They may have been reloading. So the kind of the idea that it was a confusing, chaotic fog of war is really just a fabrication. It takes time to understand exactly how the government has lied. Because they've been extremely smart about their deception. They have, if you just check the news or whatever, you'll see time and time and again these apologies they've given to the family, which has created in the public a sense that, gosh, what does this family want? They've been apologized to over and over again. Those aren't real apologies. If these people can get away with lying to the country the way they have, as shamelessly as they have, and at as high a level as they have, with all the cameras rolling and all the congressmen around, it reflects poorly on us as a culture, that we're just like, okay, well, let them do it. I mean, it reflects poorly on us as a culture, and it reflects poorly on our press, and there's a principle at stake here, and it's if you see how Stanley McChrystal, Stanley McChrystal's excuse, it's important to understand, the Silver Star that he read and that he signed off on said, Pat put himself in the line of devastating enemy fire. And then there's a period, and the next sentence is, he was mortally wounded, but was still calling out commands to the So nowhere does it say friendly fire. But it's kind of like if I said to you, on my way here I was caught in a terrible rainstorm, and I was soaking wet. And then later I said to you, what made you think the rain got me wet? I never said anything about the rain getting me wet. That's what he said, okay? And that's what he said with all the cameras rolling and all that. He said, I have to apologize to the Tillman family because I didn't read the Silver Star carefully enough to see that by reading it, you could mistakenly think he was killed by the enemy. How does somebody get away with that? And what does that say about the rest of us? So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just last question.
And that happened under the Obama administration. So
we're finding things out about the administration.
Yeah.
Just in your own heart, do you have a suspect? I mean, do you believe it stopped with one man who made this decision to turn this into a propaganda ploy, or do you feel it's a group thing? Or?
Oh no, I feel pretty clearly that this went from the bottom up as well as the top down. Not 30 seconds after Pat died, the first person who ran up to Brian O'Neill said, "Keep your mouth shut." Yeah. So that didn't come from Rumsfeld. So everybody knew that this was something that had to be lied about. And it's a mistake to think it was a handful of people or one person in the Bush administration, because it was up and down the chain of command. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
That's great, man.
Cool.